Welcome to the Mass Youth Soccer Final Score podcast, assisting the development of players, coaches, referees, and administrators, one episode at a time. Now here's your host, Marcus Cole.
Welcome to the podcast. We're excited to welcome our guest, Peter Motzenbecker, Mass Youth Soccer Assistant Technical Director. Peter, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always good to talk soccer with anyone that's willing to listen.
Absolutely. Peter recently did an article for our Final Score magazine called What to Look For in a Coach, very well received across the state. And we wanted to bring Peter on to kind of go into a little bit more detail in regards to if you're out there and you're looking for a program or a club to join, what are some things that parents and players should be looking for? So we'll go ahead and dive right into things. Obviously, as a player or parent, deciding where to play soccer can be overwhelming at times. Parents get thrown certain terms like elite, premier, select. How do you recommend families approach this decision-making process, and what key factors should they be looking for in looking for a program?
Yeah, I think that's a great first question when talking about this topic. There's so many different options that players have out there. It can be really difficult for new parents in particular to kind of navigate what's out there. You mentioned like words like elite and premier and select. What do all those all mean to people outside of soccer? What do they even mean to people inside of soccer? It's a big debate. I think generally the most important thing for any player going into a youth soccer experience is what is the coach like? Who is the coach that's going to be interacting with your player the most? Um, is that coach creating an environment that's challenging for your player? Are they creating an environment where your player's learning? Um, are they creating an environment where your player feels welcomed and everyone on the team has a sense of belonging? Those are really important aspects that you need to look at. Beyond that, of course, yes, it's important to look at maybe what the overall support for that coach is from a club perspective or program perspective. Is there administrative backing? Um, are there pathways for the player to kind of move if they need to? What's the league play like? Obviously, an important aspect of a player's experience is, are they getting competitive games? So what is that like? So there's lots of different things, but your coach and the practice environment is going to be the area where your player is most getting the most education. And so I think first and foremost, you need to understand who your coach is, what your coach is like, and is that coach the right fit for your player?
So much to think about when making that decision. Coaches obviously play such an important part in a child's soccer experience. It could lead to them leaving the sport early. It could lead to them making the sport a lifelong choice, which is obviously what we want. What qualities and behaviors should parents be looking for in that youth soccer coach so that they have that positive and supportive environment during the season?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you mentioned there is positive and supportive. Is the coach positive and supportive? There's lots of different types of coaches. There's teachers, there's kind of organizers, there's motivators, and sometimes it's easy to kind of think that maybe the performance of a coach is more important than the substance of a coach. So, you want a coach that's passionate, but passion doesn't have to be a coach on the sideline that's just kind of running up and down, shouting instructions the whole time. Passion can be that coach's own mindset, a growth mindset that they have. That can be, the number of hours they spend outside of actually coaching to develop themselves as a coach. But importantly, it's imperative that your child is learning something from their coach, and it's not just the coach putting them into an environment where they can be challenged by others, but it's about the coach being able to challenge the player with the right kind of questions and the right kind of situations that they're putting them into. It's also about how the coach motivates your player. Um, Again, you don't need motivation isn't just about kind of the rah-rah cheerleader coach on the sidelines. It's about saying the right things to a player to get them to understand their next steps as a player. It's about getting them to understand the why behind the things that you're asking them to do as a coach. And so, again, you need to, as a parent and a player, be aware of how your coach is interacting with the player. Um, Again, are they teaching them things? Are they putting them in challenging situations? And are they motivating them in a way in which the player is receptive to?
I know when my daughter decided she wanted to play club soccer, believe it or not, it took me a year and a half to find a club that had that. I did my research. I watched coaches on the sideline and watched them how they interacted. And, we ended up choosing a club that the coach was very interactive with every player and met them at every level because every player is at a different level, no matter what. You got some that are just so athletically gifted and can just go out there and do what they need to do. Then you have some that are in the middle, you have somewhere at the bottom, and the things that need that more explanation and things along that lines. But that's so important for the coaches. And speaking of that, obviously effective leadership and communication is so important for a coach, having those skills and expectations. What are some expectations maybe that parents should be looking for and having those expectations with that coach? Because I think it goes both ways. Not only the coach should have those clear expectations for the player and the parent, but also the parent should have that expectations for the coaches as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on it a little bit before in terms of making sure that every player feels a sense of belonging. That expectation that a coach, no matter, and you just kind of hinted at, yeah, there's going to be players within a team that are up here, and there's going to be players that are down here. That's just the natural makeup of a team. But is the coach treating all those players with the same amount of respect? Are they giving them the same amount of time? Um, those should be very clear expectations that a parent should have for a coach, regardless of where a player is in terms of their ability as a soccer player. Are they being treated the same by that coach? I think if that's not the case, as a parent, you would probably want to potentially look for a different environment for your player. Um, and certainly communication is a huge part of what makes a successful team environment. As coaches, sometimes it's easy to kind of think about parents as sometimes a difficult part of the team process and the team environment. But it's more important that if we look at parents as part of the team and how they can help um, kind of raise the level of the environment that they're working in and help continue the ideas that you're trying to relay to your team and the individual players. If parents are on the same page, then it makes things a lot easier. Um, you talked about expectations. It's really important as a coach to set your expectations and potentially co-create expectations within your team with the parents and players to help get that buy-in and to make sure everyone's on the same page about whether it's, how we communicate as a team, whether it's how many minutes we show up before training, how many minutes we show up before games. Those are really important parts to the overall organization of your team that can be set really easily with just a team meeting where potentially you co-create kind of the expectations and standards that you live by throughout the year. We have to make sure that we utilize parents and we embrace parents because they're a huge part of our players' lives, much more important to our players than we are as coaches. And so we have to make sure that we maintain a good relationship with them. And again, we have to make sure that they're also creating a positive environment for the players.
As a coach, we're only with the players a couple of hours a week. The parents and guardians are with them constantly. So,
Yeah.
having that parent buy-in of what you're looking to do is so important because they can reinforce that the times that you're not with them and that kind of thing, which is great. We're talking to Peter Motzenbecker, Mass Youth Soccer Assistant Technical Director, recently wrote an article called "What to Look For in a Coach" in our Final Score magazine. We'll make sure to link to that in our show notes so that you can go read it when you have a free moment. Safety is so important, both physically and emotionally in youth sports. Obviously, it's part of our mission statement, safe soccer for all with Mass Youth Soccer. How can parents assess whether a coach is meeting those types of standards, having that safety both physically and emotionally?
Yeah, I think if we, go back to the first question that was talking about what should coaches, or sorry, what should parents look for in a maybe a new coach, right? Certainly an easy way to assess that from a kind of longer term perspective is, are players returning to that team year after year, right? If you have a coach that experiences a lot of turnover each year, well, maybe that, not necessarily, but potentially that environment is maybe not particularly a safe one. Um, there's lots of different things that you can look at, and we just talked about, the players of different skill level is always going to be a fact within a team. But is that coach giving each player the same amount of attention, the same amount of dedication in their coaching? Um, I think that is a really easy way for a parent to see whether the coach is creating a safe environment for everyone, where everyone feels a sense of belonging, regardless of their playing ability. And that speaks to maybe the emotional intelligence that a coach has within that environment. Um, of course, the physical safety is incredibly important. Um, you have to make sure that coaches aren't doing things that are kind of putting players in unsafe environments and situations. But I think it's maybe more difficult, and you have to be more have a keener eye to kind of see the emotional side of things. And again, I think that comes down to the relationships that a coach is able to build with each and every player, and not just those that are maybe at the higher end of the skill level within the team. I think that's a really important and kind of clear way to identify um, that emotional side of the environment.
Yeah, it shows that the coach cares about everybody on the
Yeah.
team and wants everybody to succeed, whatever that success looks like for that player, which is great.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I think, yeah, another part to that is having conversations with parent and player about the goals that each individual player wants to hit throughout the course of a year, and trying to make sure that throughout the year that you as the coach and you as the parent are supporting that player in getting to that goal. Again, every player is going to have different ideas of where they want to be, and if a coach is willing to support every player, it's going to go a long way in creating a really good environment for the team.
I had two children that played soccer. My daughter was the more ambitious one, wanting to play at the higher levels, wanting to play in college, things along that lines. So she obviously had different goals in mind of how she wanted to. My son ended up leaving the sport at 10 years old, but his goal at the time, because he found another sport that he liked, swimming. And for him, playing was just being around the friends that he was with in school. He wanted to go in, he wanted to score a goal, and then for him, he was done for the day, and he was waiting for halftime to get snacks or after the game or anything like that. That was his goal, and that was okay, and the coach supported that, and it was good to go. So I mean, if he went in,
Sounds like that
played,
was a good coach.
yeah, I mean, he went in, scored his goal, and looked at the coach and went, "All right, I'm done." and stuff, and came out and he waited for the end of the match. He was happy and satisfied. And I think that's what we have to look for all of our players, no matter, what destination we create the pathway for them to get to that destination. As we wrap things up here on the podcast, you mentioned before a coach having a commitment to personal growth and improvement can certainly help a team. That doesn't necessarily mean getting all your coaching licenses or getting the latest license here or there. I mean, that's part of it, yes. But what can parents do to identify that coach that has that growth mindset?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said the most obvious one is a coach kind of pursuing formal education. A huge part of our growth is through that, but there's so many other ways. And it might not be the easiest thing to kind of identify as a parent, but as coaches, we should be kind of reflecting after every single practice. We should be reflecting after every single game, a reflection of both the performance of the team, but also your performance as a coach. If your coach is practicing some sort of self-reflection, I think that's a really positive sign for obviously a growth mindset, but also the fact that your coach is looking to improve the environment for your players all the time. Is your coach trying to do different things in practice to meet the needs of the players that they have? As coaches, we kind of go into a season with a plan, but maybe we don't know the players. Maybe the players develop a lot quicker than we thought. Maybe they're taking more time to understand new concepts. Are we as coaches able to meet the needs of those players? I think from a parent perspective, if you see that your players are being put in a challenging environment each practice, an appropriate challenging environment, then for me that would show some semblance of self-reflection from that coach and some understanding that they're creating sessions that meet the needs of the players that they have in front of them, which ultimately is the most important thing, is meeting the needs of the players that are in front of us. And so I think that's a really kind of demonstrates a coach's ability to kind of adapt and, like you said before, be in this growth mindset where they're making adjustments when needed, and they're willing to maybe change their own thoughts and processes to meet the needs of the environment that they're working in.
Yeah, being able to adapt to the situation is certainly so important for a coach. Peter Motzenbecker, Mass Youth Soccer Assistant Technical Director, wrote an article, What to Look For in a Coach. We'll make sure to include that in our show notes so that if you want to go check out the article, you're more than welcome to, all part of our Mass Youth Soccer Final Score magazine. Also, too, if you want to reach out to Peter to learn more, or maybe there's a question that maybe you have for Peter, or he can clarify something a little bit more, Peter's contact information is on our website, mayouthsoccer.org. Click About, and then click Staff, and then you will see Peter's smiling face there, and you can reach out to Peter and find out more. Peter Motzenbecker, thank you so much for coming on to the program today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Mass Youth Soccer Final Score podcast. Join us next time for another informative episode. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved.